Hello, YouTubers and everybody else, extended family and so forth. So this video, I'm gonna sound like I'm spurging a little bit just because, and I probably should be saying this before I go ahead and spurg, because when I spurg, it's not meant for me to have clarity in whatever I'm saying. It's just kind of there to get my thoughts out in a somewhat human way, I guess with respect to myself. So, I don't really necessarily believe in, although I guess it's not necessarily that I believe in it, but I should say that therapy is not something that I really care to do. I did it when I was a teenager, and I know that there are certain methods for how they handle for how the therapists handle their sessions and stuff like that, but it doesn't really help to find solutions to problems. Or I was only 13 when I went, so perhaps it would work to develop like solutions and frameworks to different things that can help me to actually figure out what to do next. But I think it's exponentially more helpful to read books and stuff like that, and to get experience, and to be able to reflect on that, and kind of find out, kind of categorize what your experiences and all that stuff. But the I don't know, therapy and all that stuff is like there if you're just stuck. I think if you're just kind of stuck and don't know where to go next. I think there's a lot of people that are in way worse situations than my mental state or whatever. Definitely, for sure. So spurging is a good way to get that out. I should have disclosed that from the beginning, because that's kind of what it is. It's like, just say whatever's on your mind, and you end up looking like you have Asperger's or whatever. And it's not true. It's not true. For example, my girl thought I had dry eyes, but then the guy, like, there's a lot of things that people can claim about you, but it's not true. For example, like I said about me having dry eyes, I just went to the eye doctor, and they said, I don't have dry eyes, and they looked at my glands in the back and noticed it wasn't blocked. So a lot of people say you have one thing when you really don't, or you can claim you have one thing when you really don't. You're just maybe there's some symptoms that might be masking it, and could be something completely unrelated. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, enough about that. Since my last video, I was talking about organization and stuff like that, and so basically I'm still reading that property management book, but I did finish this one. And at first I didn't really like the book, and in many ways I don't really care much for it, for what I'm trying to do right now. But it's called Real Estate Investing by Brandon Turner, and this pretty much goes over everything that I went over in that one condo video for 2019. But this comes from more experience and more, I guess, more nuanced approach to investing in real estate. And I was just explaining kind of like a 3-step process that's extremely broad. I was like broad stroking it. He was kind of like putting fine tunes to it. And my broad strokes were, I would say, probably too broad. I read through this whole book, and for example, I realized, and I know some people might give me some backlash for it, but I realized that, for example, when I was looking for foreclosure properties, my realtor said, no, you don't want to stay away from that. But really, he was protecting his own ass. It was more about the realtor than it was about me. According to the book, or I don't know if it's according to the book or if it's online, but they're not incentivized to sell you. The realtors are typically not incentivized to sell you on properties that are not in the MLS. And I think I was just looking at too many foreclosed properties that were not on the MLS. And there's also some paperwork involved that it makes it difficult to get commission from it. So for those reasons, and he probably didn't want to disclose that, of course, we didn't even touch foreclosed properties. And I just assumed that it was just not for me. But actually, he was saying 90% of the deals he makes with rental property or just properties, you know, whatever he's trying to invest in, are foreclosed properties. And it's not like they're like the worst ever. I mean, you just have to do a few things. You probably, if it's a foreclosed property, I mean, it may have no correlation with what needs to be fixed or not. It could just be that somebody was financially irresponsible, and then it just, you know, there might be like one or two problems, and he goes over the 8 issues that he typically finds that can be easily fixed. And that was something, ironically, this place had a few of those problems, and I had to actually fix it myself, you know, over time. But it's kind of interesting because he finds those problems probably more prominently in the foreclosed properties. And typically they're saying that like they're bank owned, and the foreclosed properties, and I guess if they're not on the MLS, typically they would be, well, they can't be owner occupied or owned. I don't think so. I don't really know the specifics on that, but in other words, if you were to buy a foreclosed property, they just want to stay away from it, and it has something to do with ownership as well, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, something, I forget what it was, but anyway, the whole idea was that pretty much what I concluded to is that would have been a good idea to get a foreclosed property. And okay, so what I was trying to say is that this place, this condo, was almost like a foreclosed property, but it was at market value. So of course he wanted more commission, and it was going to be a higher value to sell. So that was another thing, right? So like what I'm saying is, a lot of these properties, like I said, I'm spurging, so just keep that in mind. A lot of these properties, how do I say this? They are only going to be like, how do I say this? Like on the MLS or something like that, if they kind of pass an inspection. I don't know how to explain it. He worded it much better in this, but basically, if you were going to, shoot, how do I put this? It's more intuitive in my mind for what I'm trying to say. It's hard for me to communicate it because I read so much. This is 350 pages, and I just read it in like a weekend or so, or 2 weekends or something. So what I'm trying to say is that it's kind of hard to make it an official thing, because I guess it's not that banks don't want to have it, but there's something to do with like inspections and stuff like that don't pass, that where it becomes a foreclosed property, as opposed to selling something like this condo, which does pass all those things, those inspections and whatever is on the books. It could be a financial thing too, that basically they just keep being resold and resold at the market value, and in a cycle in a way. And so it's kind of interesting because you can have a property like that where it's not in the foreclosed state, it's not considered foreclosed, but it has the same qualities as a foreclosed property in terms of what you would be looking for, that you could get a good deal on. And that was kind of my mistake, because see, a lot of the things that he's looking for on the MLS, all those things, right? Those are especially if they're by owner, the properties by owner on the MLS are gonna be a lot of them are gonna be based off of like properties where they somehow were able to get it past inspection and past just different entities, that even though it might look like shit, it can still sell, it could still just remain on the books as acceptable. But in reality, we all know if you bring in a human being, they're not gonna find those kind of properties appealing. So I probably could have done that for this place, because I said, well, you need new, whatever, you need new flooring because it's warped, you need this, and I'm not saying I would be explicit, but I would realize that those things need to be done. And then he goes about it in this way. He says, like, before you make your first offer, include a letter with your picture in it and say, hey, I want to, I have the pleasure of speaking with blah, blah, blah. My name is this. Let me introduce myself. I'm an investor and I want to do all this. And so I didn't even do that. It's kind of funny. I didn't even think about doing that, but it does really help apparently, because then they'll see that you're an individual and you're not just like somebody trying to take advantage. That you have clear intention of what you're trying to do. And it's very interesting because every step of the process, my realtor was just like, well, just say it, just say yes, just sign here, sign here. He didn't give any suggestions as to what I can do about it like that. It was like, I didn't really think about it. Like, how come he's not giving me advice as to, like, I just assumed that when he was saying, nope, this is how it works, this is how it works, this is how it works, that he was pretty much like, he was basically putting everything in a box to make me understand it in a simple way. But in reality, we all know, well, now I know, I guess the big elephant in the room was that you can get a lot more creative with the closing process, or I shouldn't say closing process, but partially the closing process, but also the offering process from start to finish with that whole thing about buying a rental property. And I just think it's just hilarious, because it's like, if I just had like one or two other people that were kind of in the different, advising me in a different direction, which I don't know how you get that, to be honest. I mean, you would have to have like an actual investor that would be advising you, but they would have to, I don't really know, actually. It's really hard to say how you would go about doing that, but I mean, this book in itself is kind of like your friend in a way. In certain terms of that, it would be giving you an additional perspective. But what I noticed is that when it comes to those kinds of things, hold on a second. When it comes to those kinds of things, I mean, he describes it in this book, and I could have, I mean, if I were to write the same book, let me put it this way. If I were to write the same book that's 350 pages, because this is all useful information, and I think his net worth is $10 million. Based off of my own experience and what I know and stuff like that, or whatever I dealt with the realtor, it'd probably be only 10 pages. It'd barely be anything, maybe less than that, because because the realtor basically oversimplified the process, making it seem like it's easy. But he's basically giving you advice into every little process, like what you should be doing in addition to just signing papers. And it's kind of interesting, because this is like giving you a big picture, like, well, this is how it really works. And it kind of motivated me to try to get another deal again, because it's like, this is my first deal and I could always try to go back out there, especially because I have the ability to generate, I could do the BRRRR thing right away, because I have the ability to refinance this to get equity into another property if I really wanted to. Because right now I have about 70K of equity in this property. It started off at 125,000. I'm sorry, not 70K. I'm sorry, not 70K. That's how much I've paid off. I'm saying it's probably worth about 230, 220K now. So my equity is like 170,000 or so. 170, 160, maybe a 150. Depends on how it's valued, whatever. But yeah, so I could definitely use that for other properties if I really wanted to, if I wanted to follow that so-called BRRRR strategy, which I fucking hate. I fucking hate that acronym or whatever it is. Like I guess he coined the BRRRR shit, you know. Whenever I think of BRRRR, I just think of like these sleazeballs of realtors, like or real estate investors trying to like sell you on some stupid, like some lame ass like idea that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. and like not going into any details or anything. Brr, brr, I'm gonna lick the liquid off your asshole. Brr, you know, that kind of thing. That's just my opinion on that, on what burr is, but I know. But yeah, it was a good book because and then he also goes over like debt to income ratio. That seems like it's obvious, but he goes into detail about it in terms of getting your loan approved. Because I would do pretty well with that, I think, or you know. But there is a few flaws in terms of where I'm at with this. I would say that this is more of general, like everything that I've done and everything that I want to do. But this book that I'm going through right now, the Property Management Kit, this is more particular. It's like what I'm going to do right now, you know. And this actually goes in, it's 40 years of experience in this one book. Goes into detail about basically how you become organized towards doing all this property management. But he kind of goes over a little bit of what you would need to do, but he's not very detailed about it. Not very well. He's organized in the book, but he's not organized. He's not giving you advice on how to be organized. Even there's actually a section in here. He says that his wife is what keeps him organized, and I'm like, oh, okay. So his organization skills are also bad. Okay, I'm like, I'm not alone with that. So there's other people that probably made him successful. Here he says here. For example, my wife doesn't sit down and analyze every property with me, but she enjoys dealing with the books and keeping us organized. Something I do not excel at. It's hilarious. And then the other book says you have to be organized. So I'm sure that there's a lot of teamwork, you know, that goes beyond whatever it is. And the other thing I noticed about this book is that, yes, even though what he says is true, a lot of times it's true, he'll kind of hint at the fact that it works for him, but it may not work for other people. And the frameworks he's providing may be tentative. It's not quite fixed. Of course, it's not quite fixed. I mean, it's just a book. It's just kind of his thoughts. But in particular, I wanted to. This is probably what I'm going to end the video with. But this idea that, well, how do you become successful in real estate investing, right? Well, he kind of says what you got to do is buy, and this is pretty much what my realtor was thinking probably too, that you buy properties and you only go so far with fixing it up. And then when renting out is part of the business, but at some point, if you are able to afford it, you're obviously just gonna, the so-called obvious thing is that you're gonna sell it and get something better and do a 1031 exchange on it, which means that, because you're allowed to get 100% tax write-off, or I should say it transfers over to the next property if you buy a property that's equal or greater value. So this whole idea of real estate investing kind of assumes that it works off of doing kind of a minimum job. And so what I mean by that is, for example, I believe that this whole business is actually, for the most part, doesn't work everywhere, and it doesn't work for highly developed areas. Like if you think back at the, what was it, the Wealth of Nations book, it kind of goes back to that, because if you were in areas where you have buildings, but they weren't very developed, then your competition would be, basically goes back to competition. Your competition would be high just based off of doing those minimal things like changing carpets, painting the walls. And that seems like that's all it is, you know, changing the flooring. But here's what I'm thinking. If you're in a place like California, like me, and everybody's expecting top-notch things, and maybe it's not just location. I think for the most part at this point we've been developed in 2025 in general, there's very little like areas that are underdeveloped. And what I mean by that is, since everything is developed, I believe that if you want to be in competition as a landlord, you have to be a so-called developer. So you have to focus, you have to basically be an architect to be able to be successful. So you have to bring that concept of redoing the houses or whatever like just basic things, and you have to put that to an advanced state. You have to get it up there. So it's like no wonder why, like, because I'll watch Anton Daniels, and he calls everybody pretty much slumlords if they're not developers. And I understand what he means, because I also basically I went way beyond this when it comes to what the book was discussing in this condo. Every landlord that would come by, the classic landlord, like what they're describing, would say I overdid it. But I think that you have to actually be a developer these days if you want to be a successful landlord. There's just no way. I think there's no way about it. And we'll see. The upcoming. I mean, this is apart from being a successful property manager. And so we'll see the fruits of my labor once I actually find a tenant, assuming I can actually do well at talking like I was 6 years ago, which I think I will. I mean, so far I understand it's about organizing and stuff like that. So I believe, this is my belief, because I mean, apart from Brandon, I think I was listening to other people, it sounds like you can't be that kind of landlord anymore where you can switch out unless you're in a place like that's still developing. Like apparently the Midwest is like this, like Ohio or Arizona, places in Arizona and stuff like that. If you're in California, good luck with that. I believe you still won't be competitive, because I think people still fail. Like the landlords still fail, even when they kind of do a minimum job like that. And a minimum job, what I mean is you're still pretty a minimum job is still pretty substantial. It's still somewhat higher cost. But we're talking about like maybe a 4-fold, 5-fold difference between a developer and just a regular renovator. So for example, I think I put in about $40,000 of development or renovations into this condo. But I think, and that's just what I think had to be done. Now I didn't have to do certain things. Maybe I could have made that a little bit less, maybe more like 25,000. But when it comes to a place like this and people that are discussing, like that book is discussing, you wouldn't have to put any more than, I would say, 10,000, maybe 7,000 to just do the basic minimum job of a landlord, even less than that. But I over time I'm learning that I think we're headed in a different direction. So in a way, this book is it is from 2015, and it may not be applicable to places like that are already developed. But see, he's kind of going over small landlords, and so small landlords wouldn't be developers because by definition they would have to be, by definition they're small, so they have to work off of a smaller budget. So I happen to be in a slightly larger active income bracket, so I can afford this to some extent to actually be a developer for a small condo like this. But the other thing I wanted to discuss was what was it? Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. But oh, right. So Brandon Turner also, obviously his net worth is like 10 million plus, but I think that his model is that if you're starting off as a small landlord and you kind of get beyond that to be more successful, he's saying basically you want to strive to put your money towards things that are more passive, and that usually involves syndications, which is like real estate, REITs, investment trusts, funds, and stuff like that. So I think the model he has in his mind is that you get to a certain point where you can't really be a landlord beyond a certain point. So you might as well sell on those and then get things that are more passive. And maybe he was speaking at this from a less net worth point of view, but I actually think that, well, he even admitted that he didn't do much commercial properties. But either you have to start investing in commercial properties or you become a developer for residential properties. That's my take on that, and I could be wrong. So development goes beyond what he's discussing, and some people might just call that renovation, like a more costly renovation. But once you get into the development stage, you're talking about building off of a land pretty much. I probably got into the budget range for that. I just kind of overshot a little bit, so I stuck with the same, just basically renovating off of the same building. And in reality, it probably would have made sense for me to do development off of a off of land that's there, but it where a building hasn't been put on there. Because I did substantial work to this place, almost to that point. I mean, the framing wouldn't even be that bad compared to some of the stuff I did, because it's so repetitive and you just requires some work. And obviously there's like a lot of energy with that, but it's very consistent compared to like doing this electrical thing or this little finishing thing, painting this and all that. You got all this finishing stuff. That actually, you would think it doesn't require any work, but it does. It may not be like super handy, like super sweat related, but it's more, it's like I don't know, it's just very like awkward movements and stuff like that, But yeah, it was an interesting book. It was definitely worth reading because I can draw from my own experiences and can see where I can go from here. That was more of a qualitative book. Like I said, the other book is more, I'm sorry, not qualitative. I mean more opinionated, I guess. This one is more objective, like what you can do and what you can say. Okay, but enough with that. So the other thing that's been happening with me is I've for some reason, when they want me to renew my license, and it's because I have two points because of the freaking accident. And remember I told you I got that speeding ticket in June, and those otherwise I had a clean record. They want me to basically retake a written knowledge test, written test, and they also they want me, but I have the option of taking an online class that only lasts for 40 minutes, or I could do the in-person test. I'm like, dude, screw it, I'll just do the online. But I thought it was, and then they want me to do a vision test, so I went to get my prescription for my glasses redone because it's been about 6 years since I've gotten new glasses. So they're gonna come in. I paid $55 for that in about a week and a half, and they're actually more durable than this, and they're not as wonky because these have been like smashed out of place from time to time. They're almost broken now. It's been 6 years. I've had these glasses for like 6 years. So yeah, that's gonna be cool. But like, I'm gonna need that because they want me to take a vision test at the place. And it's like, he's freaking serious. They want me to get a fingerprint too. They think I'm a criminal. Like, are you serious? I'm so much of a non-criminal, if you will, that I'll record these videos talking about how bad I feel and stuff, or whatever, and that takes longer than whatever they want me to do. But yeah, it's just weird. I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna take it too seriously. It is what it is. But yeah, I gotta get back to work. All right, take care. Thanks for watching.